Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'm so excited to be joined with you this Monday morning. It's a little cold outside. Good morning, this autumn, late August morning, or dare I say September morning. Yeah, September is just around the corner. It's pretty cold outside. I'm based in Central Illinois. And yeah, it's pretty cold. I could see my breath outside, which I'm not totally upset about. I was really looking forward to cooling down a little bit so I could walk my dog. Now I'm kind of regretting it because it's kind of really cold. But I'm kind of excited for the pumpkin spice lattes. I am a basic white girl. I love pumpkin spice lattes. I absolutely love apple picking and pumpkin patches. Yes, I am a basic white girl. I love that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited for the Burr months, September, October, November. December, I do love Christmas time. So yeah, although it's cold, we've got a lot of things to look forward to. All right, I do want to get to the feminazi, the feminazis. I call them the feminazis. They made a post, or this one feminazi made a post about President Donald Trump, about the crackdown on crime in Chicago, and really her post broke the internet. It went viral. She took it down. She deleted it. So we're going to be talking about this feminazi's post because it's hilarious, and it kind of broke the internet. So you got to know about it. And written in a dorm room. A lot of people, they'll, get all up in arms about the abortion laws. Yes, Illinois is a safe haven for abortions, and it's absolutely disgusting. It's a pagan ritual, and abortion has become a religion here in the state of Illinois. But I do want to focus on a particular aspect of these two bills, specifically one that was written in a dorm room by college students. There is a fascination at a state level and at a local level, because we're seeing this more and more where students or young adults are serving on boards, higher education boards. They're serving on community boards. Like in Bloomington, there's this board where a couple of younger minors even can sit, and it's a public safety review board, and they review police officer misconduct cases. Okay, so it'll first go to the Bloomington Police Department, the misconduct, the complaint against, say, an officer, and if they are unsatisfied with the police department's review, then that goes up to the public safety review board. And there's a couple of kids, like young adults, who sit on this board, like they're young. Okay, and I don't know what the fascination is here with young people writing laws. I'm not against them taking tours of the Capitol, being involved in politics, and getting started early. But there is a difference between grooming children for activism and grooming them to become public sector acolytes, okay, elitists, grooming them to become activists. And then there's, teaching children about civics and politics and getting them excited about the process. There is a big difference between teaching them and recruiting them as members of an army. And the Democrat Party is hell-bent on recruiting children for their army. More and more, I'm starting to see, Illinois Department of Human Services, or the IDHS Human Services, the Illinois Department of Human Services, they have DCFS under their peer review, that state agency. There's a sub-agency, that's DCFS. And then there's a board of, solely made up of children, okay, who went up through or are going through the DCFS system. And it's really bizarre because they craft legislation too, and they craft laws and draft bills. And I don't know about you, but I don't want kids writing legislation. If I wanted that, then I would have elected a child. But you can't run for office. You can't even vote before the age of 18. So yeah, I'm not really cool with them writing laws. This one law was written in a dorm room. So, and that was by the admission of the college student who wrote it. So it's all delusional. We're going to get into more delusion here on the Conservative Catch-Up. Be sure to support the program by going to patriotpenenergy.com. Buy your bottle of premium pre-workout. It's right on the shelf behind me. If you guys are curious what that looks like, patriotpumpenergy.com, use the promo code conservativecat, $10 off. You guys are the only ones who get that promo code, by the way, if you watch this program. So we offer that to you only, and we really need help supporting the program because we want to do so much more. I want to do more exclusive interviews. I want to do more exclusive content, and I want to build up theconservativecat.com, the infrastructure there on the website, and provide you guys blog posts so that way you guys have something back to go back to and to reference these articles that I talk about on a daily basis. I want you guys to have that. So support the program any way you can. Super chats are always welcome. Let's talk a little bit about this feminazi. I'm going to start there this morning because this is delusion. This is destructive. This demographic. Okay. And I like to call them feminazis. And you would think that the most destructive demographic are, these Islamic terrorists or Chinese communists. And we kind of think, oh, what's the most destructive? The Islamic radical terrorist. Yeah. But really, I think that the most destructive demographic in the United States today is the feminazi, the white female liberals, typically of a higher status, affluent white female liberals. And in wake of President Donald Trump's crackdown on crime, which is reportedly supposed to show up to Chicago next, perhaps this week sometime, I'm hoping. This woman is particularly awful. She stepped forth and delivered a post that broke the internet, essentially. This feminazi is what I will call her. She, and I don't really know her name or anything like that. I mean, she took down the post within minutes because it got like very, very viral very quickly. So I don't know her like personally or anything like that. Like, this is just a woman on the internet, and I think she goes by the name Jill. Okay. So she wants you to know that she was carjacked in Chicago. I've never been carjacked. I have had things stolen out of my car. I've had break-ins before. I lived in the town of Normal. I've had my car broken into when I lived in the town of Normal twice. Okay. And I had my car locked, and they were able to jimmy it open, and they stole, at the time I was smoking cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore. Praise the Lord. 5 years I haven't smoked. But they stole my cigarettes, they stole my wallet, all that stuff that was in my car. It was locked, and it was in my apartment complex, like parking lot, and I just kept getting my car broken into. So eventually I started parking my car on the street, and I didn't have any more problems after that. But we never found the guy. I don't think the cops really took it seriously because it was happening everywhere, and there was nothing that they could do to find the guy, I guess. And I was like, okay, whatever. But it's really traumatic. So I don't understand this woman. She actually got carjacked, okay, which is much different than a burglary. I wasn't there. When you're carjacked, you're typically there, and she was there, and she had her arm broken by criminals who violently attacked her and carjacked her. So she posted a picture of the bruising to prove that she was carjacked. Her arm was broken, and she pictured the bruising of her broken arm, and she pictured a selfie of her in her cast, smiling. Though through all that pain and turmoil, if you've ever been a victim of crime, it's terrifying. Now, thank God I've never been a victim of violent crime. But just being burglarized is pretty traumatizing. I felt like I wasn't safe. I felt like people were watching me, when I got home. And I had my apartment broken into. This was in Normal as well, but at a separate apartment, not where my car was getting burglarized, but somebody had broken in and taken a couple of things. And it's traumatizing. So I just don't get how she could come out, and her hatred for Donald Trump was stronger than the trauma that she experienced when she had a carjacker break her arm and violently assault her and attack her. So her hatred of Donald Trump shines through here in this post, and she announced that she would rather be carjacked and beaten than to have the president here in Chicago to stop the crime in her city. So Jill, this feminazi, she had broken the internet essentially with this tweet. Take a look. And this is just like straight up a real tweet. This is real. Dear Donald Trump, I've been carjacked in Chicago with my arm broken, and I still don't want your troops here. By the way, there are no red hats. I don't know what TIA means. Maybe you guys can throw that in the comment section. I've got no idea what that means. There are no red hats here, heart. God, this is so weird. This is legit the most insane post I think I've ever laid eyes on. Now, as ratios go, I'm not sure I've ever seen a post as bad as this. This pretty much takes the cake. Now, she did delete the post, but it did garner over like 18,000 replies. It pretty much went viral. The damage was done. The internet had been officially broken before she had deleted the post. I saw this tweet. This is kind of hilarious. Somebody replied to Jill here. Take a look at this. It's pretty funny. This is one of the 18,000 replies she received. You're the most ruthless enemy. Your most ruthless enemy is not some dude in the Middle East with an AK, an RPG, and a ski mask. Your most ruthless enemy is some chick in America with liberal arts degree, an SSRI prescription, and way too much free time. Exactly. Like, this woman is borderline dangerous, because I wouldn't even say borderline. I would say that she's part of a dangerous demographic, because she's essentially saying that crime, people breaking arms, that doesn't matter. Okay, that does matter, and it's scary, and it's usually traumatizing, and you would think that this woman would hold that belief, being that it happened to her. But like I said, the most dangerous demographic is this feminazi, typically white females who are rich, wealthy, and liberal. So some people think I'm exaggerating when I say that they are the most dangerous demographic that the United States faces right now. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I know that people are like, oh, well, they're just women with they're typically graduates. They're typically, going in for their master's degree or whatever the hell, Kat, why are you so worried about these feminazis? It's because they have a capacity to do damage and to weaponize. I mean, look at what happened to a lot of, and we're going to be talking about an abortion story today because Governor J.B. Pritzker signed 2 abortion bills. But look at what they did to the Planned Parenthood clinics, bombings. I mean, they have got this down where they can organize, and your ability and your capacity to do damage is directly correlated to their proximity to power. They are very powerful because they can do a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. The feminazis typically. So I don't think that like a feminazi would commit a suicide bombing. Probably not. But they make up a huge voting block. Right? And Governor J.B. Pritzker knows this. That's why he chose Illinois to be the abortion safe haven. And we pretty much practice abortion as a religion here in the state of Illinois via our laws, where it's like a religious cult almost, abortion here in the state, because he understands that they make up a huge voting block, and that can lead to obviously policies, and has led to policies that have led to the downfall of our civilization. These feminazis are extremely dangerous. So they will use every ounce of authority they acquire to tear down everything that we once knew in favor of this self-destructive virtue signaling. So, for example, on Friday, I talked about Cracker Barrel. This is just feminazi-ism. And the whole gray, black, and white interior design that people say that's millennial. No, it's actually feminaziism. So who's usually in charge of decorating the home, making the house a home? That's typically up to women. Those are traditional gender roles. Like, the woman is usually the one who decorates the household. Now, these CEO type women, they typically go very, very minimalist as almost like a big middle finger to the family, saying like, I will not put in any effort to decorate my home. I will make it like very plain, and it's almost like an act of rebellion. So people say that the gray interior and the white and the minimalist type decorating, which Cracker Barrel is shifting to, they say that's millennial. No, it's actually feminazi. And it's an act of rebellion because women are typically supposed to be the interior designers or like the decorators of the home. And yeah, they tear down everything that is good and that everything that you once knew. Okay, Cracker Barrel, iconic for having all of the crap on the walls, and it looks like Grandpa's house, with tools all over the walls, very cluttered, and it's iconic. But they tear that down. They tear down everything that you knew because it's an act of rebellion, and it's in favor of their self-destructive virtue signaling. So, violent crime, it's just something that you have to deal with, so that these wine-sipping left-wing women can continue their ally savior and feed into their savior complex, and that they're an ally of the Black community. See, I'm not against criminals, and I love criminals. The Black community, which does commit most of the crimes, that's not due to skin color. It's due to fathers being out of the home and fatherless homes. We can definitely trace back the violent crime and most of the crimes, although they are a minority of the population. Like, this is just statistical facts, okay? I'm not trying to be racist. I know I'm going to get that in the comment section. It's just facts that the Black community commits most of the crimes despite being the minority of the population, okay? And left-wing women, they want to be allies. They want to have this savior complex. And you can't address violent crime because it jeopardizes their savior complex and their virtue signaling and their ability to be an ally. So there's no reasoning with these types of women. Appeals to freedom, appeals to logic do not matter to them. Clearly, this woman had no logic. Now, Jill, we pretty much know who she is because she told us in 2020 who she is. Take a look at this tweet. This is a tweet from 2020. She said, "Hey, United Airlines, isn't the airline policy for people to be wearing masks in the gate area? Dude in the red tank isn't wearing one and he's coughing a lot." So this is the type of woman who definitely would have called in on a snitch line, by the way, during the pandemic. Remember when they set those up, a snitch line to snitch on your neighbor for not wearing a mask? This is their world, and you're just kind of living in it. And there's no way that you can really appeal to these women by logic or appeal to freedom. These appeals to freedom and logic do not apply. You will be subject to their worst instincts and to their perverted desires. And if you object to their desires, their perverted desires, and their terrible instincts, if you object to any of it, you will be labeled a misogynist. So they aren't going away. They're never going to stop. And they will not rest until there's nothing left. And we live in this feminazi utopia that they have dreamed up in their warped minds. They intend to accomplish their goal of taking down America without firing a single shot. And I think that these are truly dangerous people, worse than Al-Qaeda, worse than, and I know that sounds hyperbolic, but they have so much power. Their proximity to power, it's their capacity to do damage, and they do a lot of damage in this country. Just look at what they've been able to do as far as this entire millennial decor movement, right? They say it's all minimalist, black, gray colors. We've been able to, the feminazis have been able to shift the way our homes look on the inside. And I don't know about you, but that is crazy amounts of power. our cars that we drive from like 1990 to now, they used to be like all kinds of colors, like purple, orange, green, red. There used to be all kinds of colors on the road. Now, if you look at the color makeup of our cars on the road, they're pretty much all gray and black. And really what this is, it is an act of rebellion, trying to take the life out of the home and the life out of the nation. And they're really good at it. So there's no more dangerous demographic than feminazis on planet Earth. I think that they are the most dangerous demographic on planet Earth. All right, I want to shift gears. We are going to be talking about this weird press conference that happened. It was at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Let me take a sip of coffee here. I'm drinking out of my ask me about my pronouns. American, I guess. She, her, those are my pronouns, I guess. I bought this ironically at Target. I thought it was funny. Ask me about my pronouns. I'll tell you that, I am voted for Donald Trump in 2024 pronouns. Those are my pronouns in my bio. So we're going to talk about this. This is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker at it again. This is so annoying. Okay, so you're dealing with inflation. I know you're dealing with inflation. Your high electric bills, my electric bill went up by 47%, just shy of 50%. I've heard reports of people's electric bill doubling. It's really bad. Small businesses are being crushed by taxes. We know Chicago violence has gotten out of hand. We will get to the statistics. They're trying to say that murder is down. It's probably because they don't report murder as murder anymore, and that there's bodies on the slab in the morgue, and the cause of death is pending. And like I said, since the beginning of this year, it's like over 240 murders, or like death by homicide, this year in Chicago alone. Okay, that's insane. And there's like 328 bodies on the slabs in the morgues where the death is pending. So the Chicago violence is really bad, but they'll try to say that murder is down. You can't really say that when you have deaths in the morgue pending, the cause of death pending. Okay, so they've manipulated the statistics. They've tried to say that violence is down in Chicago. It's a flat out lie. Violence is up, especially when you look at theft, carjackings, all of that. Retail theft is up. So violence is plaguing Chicago. So we're dealing with all of these things in Illinois. And what does your governor focus on? Throw it in the comment section. I'll pause for dramatic effect. What do you think Governor J.B. Pritzker is focused on? Ding, ding, ding. You're right. Abortion. So, in fact, he wants to expand abortion. I don't know how you do that. Like, literally, these people must lay asleep at night on their pillow, and they dream of ways of expanding abortion. And they come up with all these obscure ways to expand abortion, because at this rate, you can't really expand abortion any more than it already is here in the state of Illinois. Because I'll just give you an extreme example. A 12-year-old girl can go into not even just a clinic. She could pretty much go into any doctor's office, get a chemical abortion via the pills without any kind of parental consent, and she can get it for free using taxpayer dollars. Okay, so it doesn't get much more extreme than that. 12-year-olds walking into a doctor's office, any type of clinic, obtaining chemical abortion pills, not having to take those in the presence of a medical professional or under medical supervision. She can take those without parental consent here in the state of Illinois and have it paid for. She could also get the actual procedure itself. But I mean, this is as extreme as you get. So the Democrats, they lay their head on the pillow at night and they come up with these obscure ways. One of the obscure ways of expanding abortion is offering abortion pills on college campuses. And they want to make Illinois a so-called safe haven for women seeking abortions in other states. So you can be probably a 12-year-old girl in another state, come here and get a taxpayer-funded abortion without your parents knowing. I mean, that's how crazy Illinois law is when it comes to abortion. It's very extreme. Now you can go into college campuses, like their student health services, their centers, and then you can go into pharmacies on college campuses and obtain abortion services with this new bill. And if that's not cringy enough, if that doesn't make your blood boil, Governor J.B. Pritzker compared abortion activists and their fight for abortion, the women who are fighting for this, he compared them to the women of the Avengers Endgame recently at a signing of these bills at a press conference type. And he compared the women fighting for abortion to the Avengers Endgame women. Okay, so you know the scene at the end of the movie, and it's usually deemed like the worst part of the movie. Like, people really didn't like that scene. It's the last scene of Avengers Endgame, where all the women, you know, they team up against like Thanos or something. I haven't seen the movie in so long, but yeah, it's been dubbed like the worst scene in that movie. He compared the women who championed these laws, these bills in the State House and in the Senate. He said that those women are just like the women in the Avengers Endgame movie. So today we're going to dig deep into these two new laws. They were recently signed. We're going to dig deep into the worldview behind them and the dangerous precedent they set. Okay, so more so, I'm not going to argue about abortion. You guys know I'm totally against it and that I believe life starts at conception. You guys get that? I am going to argue a lot about the precedent this sets, because one of these bills was drafted by college students, like openly admitted this on a microphone in a press conference. And there's this fascination with including children in drafting legislation and sitting on boards that make decisions about legislation. There's like this fascination about it amongst the left and amongst Democrats. And I'm all for kids being active civic, you know, and understanding government and civics. And I'm all for that. I am against them becoming activists, and I am against weaponizing them and recruiting them for an army to serve our political agenda. I'm against that, and the Democrats aren't. And it's becoming more and more evident that they are recruiting an army of children to fight their battles for them. And it's disturbing. So we're going to get to this and what these laws mean for young women in Illinois. And spoiler, it's not empowerment, it's exploitation. I'm going to take a quick break, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, and you know, we're going to be talking about the myth of free college day. Free college, they cry, as if professors would grade 100 term papers for hugs. Okay, do you know any professor that would be willing to grade papers in exchange for hugs? I don't know any professors that would do that. And let me get one thing straight. There's no such thing as free college. Somebody pays for it. And spoiler alert, it's not the kid getting the woke gender studies degree. It's going to be you. It's going to be me via our taxes, your grandchildren's taxes. And they slap the word free on it, and they hope that you don't notice the bill until it's too late. So you know what happens when you make college free? You're going to flood the system with a bunch of people who aren't really ready for the working world. And then you're going to jack up tuition costs, because if it's getting paid by the taxpayer, why not jack up the tuition costs? And not to mention, you're devaluing the degree, okay? A bachelor's in gender liberation studies is not going to be worth much when you hand out these degrees like candy. Any kind of degree that you hand out, if you start handing them out like candy, then they're not going to be worth very much. And what's worse are these bloated institutions spending a whole lot of time pushing Marxist ideology, and they're not actually teaching our students marketable skills. There's diversity coordinators at these bloated institutions who make six figures, and your kid isn't able to get the student isn't able to get an internship unless they sell their soul to the wokeism ideology and they sign a pledge about climate reparations, and they subscribe to this wokeism ideology. Here's a revolutionary idea, everyone. Not everyone needs to go to college. Trade schools, you can build homes, you can fix engines, you can wire up buildings, you can keep America humming. A welder can make up to $90K a year with no debt, a couple of trucks in the driveway, and he doesn't need a Marxist lecture on how his white privilege makes him inherently biased. Okay, free college and the free college crowd, they say that education is a right, but when government makes a right, they get to control it. So they'll say education is a right, and that's why it's got to be free. Reminder, spoiler alert, it's not free. They decide what gets taught, what speech is allowed, what ideas are allowed on campus, who's allowed on campus. That's not in education, that is indoctrination. So they say education is a right, and when government affords you rights, then they get to control it. Government is not in the business of giving you rights. We have unalienable rights, and those are laid out in the Constitution. Proverbs 22:7 says, the borrower is servant to the lender. Maybe we should stop chaining children, chaining our young youth to debt in the name of fake opportunity. There's fake opportunity, and let's start talking about hard work, grit, and real world skills. Okay, don't fall for the fantasy. Nothing in life is free except salvation. And even that came at a cost. Jesus paid it, not the federal government. Okay, so it's time to stop sending our kids into these ideological boot camps, and we have to start investing in real futures. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Let's get to some of your comments. Untrue. Vehicle color is economy based. So earlier I was talking about the feminazis and how they are a very dangerous demographic. And, a lot of people say that the sleek, minimalist, gray, black, and white interior, this is kind of where we've shifted our decor. We've gone from maximalism to minimalism. And I said, really, that's an act of rebellion. And with what's going on with Cracker Barrel, the CEO, and the decisions, she's clearly a feminazi. Okay. I'm sure she goes to Peloton classes and sips oat milk lattes that cost $7, and is she's one of these affluent, and this is important, wealthy white women who virtue signal, and they are a very dangerous demographic because they can really change. They have a capacity for damage, a very high capacity for damage, which means that they are very close. Have a lot of power, and I think that your ability to cause mass amounts of damage correlates directly to your power and how powerful you are. So they have an ability to inflict all kinds of damage on the country. Number one, because they are a huge voting bloc, and Governor J.B. Pritzker is not an idiot. He understands that. That's why he's made abortion like a religion here in the state of Illinois. But you had mentioned the vehicle color is based off the economy. True. So, for example, when women started to enter the workforce, women have to drive to work, and it is economy based because guess what? Now the consumer is females. They were always the major consumers, but men typically got a say, prior to this, women entering the workforce and becoming CEOs and getting their own cars and things like that. Men had a say in the car. Okay. So back in the 90s, 80s, women were going to work, but not to the tune of what we've got now. Okay. It was more typical for a woman to stay home, to decorate the house, right? And this is an act of rebellion. Like, oh, I'm not going to put in any effort into the home. I'm going to make it as minimalist as possible and as dull as possible. And that is where the minimalist gray, black, white decor thing came from. It's feminaziism, okay? And it's very powerful because look at all of our homes. This is a trend where you do minimalist decor, and that's what people's houses look like now. So that's very powerful if you can change the inside of people's houses. But I also talked about the cars and how the cars have gone from very, very colorful in the 90s and have shifted to just black, white, and gray in the 2020s. I'd say like 2010s to 2025, it really started to shift. That's when you start to see a lot of women entering the workforce. There was this explosion of women CEOs, and now they need cars. So men typically had more of a say over what the car looked like, what kind of car that they drove, because they were the ones driving it. Now women, there's 2-car households. This is very common, right? And women drive their own cars. And as another middle finger, much like the decor in the household being black, gray, and minimalist, they said, you know what, we're not going to drive around pink cars, or we're not going to drive around cars with color. We are going to be rebellious, and we're going to be as dull as possible. And we want to act like men, like gray, black. This is typically the color of suits, okay, that men wear when they go to work. So they're just trying to mimic men, and they're doing it as an act of rebellion. So you're right, it is the economy, but it's because it is economy based. The vehicle change, the colors in our vehicles change, but it's because women entered this consumer base, and like they were a large part of the consumer base prior to entering, the workforce and in this large, massive wave. And I'd say like 2010s, 2025 is when they really became like, high ranking in the company, CEO corporate type culture. They started to enter the economy, and they were like the large consumer base of vehicles. Okay. So they started marketing towards these feminazis, these affluent white liberal women. You also mentioned electric bills are increasing due to AI data centers requiring massive amounts of energy. Yes, massive amounts of energy are needed. So what do we do? What should we do? Really, the electric bills are increasing because we are shifting the grid away from things that work. Your nuclear, your nuclear and your coal power plants. Okay, we've shifted away from that due to CEJA, that is the Climate Equitable Jobs Act. They've shifted away from that, and they've gone all in on wind and solar, which are ineffective. This is Illinois. The sun's rarely out. The winds, goes sometimes, and even then, the windmills have like a turbine in the back. They call them wind turbines because there's a gas-powered engine in the back of them to get them to spin slightly. But that's because of the shift. So we don't have the supply, and we're not adding more supply energy to the grid, effective energy to the grid. So that is why energy bills are skyrocketing, because demand is going up, but our supply is going down. And why is the supply going down? It's because we've transitioned the supply of electricity from nuclear and coal to wind and solar. There's also mandates that we can't forget. That's why electric bills are skyrocketing as well. Since Governor J.B. Pritzker has taken office, there's been a couple of mandates, one of them being you can't shut off people's electric if it's higher than 90 degrees or lower than 30 degrees. Now, I don't know about you. If you live in Illinois, you know that a majority of the year, it is not a nice, cool, comfortable 40 to 70 degrees, okay? That just doesn't happen. We are typically pretty much all winter long underneath that 32 degree mark. And then we are typically all summer long above that 90 degree mark. So you can't shut people's electric off if they are delinquent on their bills or aren't paying their bills. So who pays for that ultimately? You do. The paying tax ratepayer, the person who actually pays their bill, winds up paying and subsidizing their poor decision making for not paying their electric bills through the form of fees. So if you looked at your ComEd bill, you'd actually see the fees. These are typically like surcharges where those will come up, the mandates where, you can't shut people's electric off pretty much all year round. Because let's face it, like it's always 90 degrees or above. We're always 32 and below. We have maybe 3 months out of the year you get like the in between of that. We have pretty extreme weather here in the state of Illinois. It's the Midwest, okay, and people are paying for people who don't pay their electric bill here in the state of Illinois because Governor J.B. Pritzker has allowed that because he's a fan of socialism. Okay, I wanted to address those comments. Let's get to this bill, these bills, because I'm going to dive deep into 2 new laws. He signed them, Governor J.B. Pritzker. I want to dive deep into the worldview behind them and the dangerous precedent that they set, more specifically, and what these laws now mean for young women in Illinois. So here's what happened. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he signed the laws at University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Let's talk about 3709. This is House Bill 3709. It requires college campus pharmacies and student health centers to provide abortion pills and contraception. Okay, so translation, abortion will now be a student service right. That is what 3709 does. It makes abortion service a right to students, okay, on campuses, right next to like flu shots and allergy meds. Like it's a right, okay, that they have given. And let's remember, government doesn't give you rights. You have certain unalienable rights that are bestowed by a creator, endowed by a creator. So that's one bill. Okay, so abortion pills provided on pharmacy or in college campus pharmacies and on student health centers. House Bill 3637. This one is, I don't know, it's got to be challenged by the court. I mean, I would imagine somebody could bring a lawsuit. It strengthens what's called Illinois Shield Law. Okay, so it provides protections for abortion providers from out-of-state prosecution if they help women travel here for abortions. So hypothetically, say there is a 12-year-old girl. She lives in, let's say, South Carolina, okay, where abortion is, a 6-week ban. Or let's do Georgia. Georgia, I know, has a 6-week ban. I don't know South Carolina's laws. So Georgia has a 6-week ban, a heartbeat ban, okay? You can't get an abortion after 6 weeks. Say she travels to Illinois to go get her taxpayer-funded abortion, and an abortion provider kind of facilitates this, okay? What out-of-state, like these Georgia, these states that have strict abortion laws were doing, because really that's trafficking children. Like if you provide taxpayer dollars enough for her to travel, and this is what Illinois has been doing across state lines, okay, without parental consent, because they removed parental consent. Remember that 12-year-olds without their parents' consent can come to Illinois on taxpayer dollars and travel expenses paid. They can come here for an abortion procedure. And what states were doing, they were saying, well, that's trafficking children. Okay, you're taking taxpayer dollars and you're paying to really have them flee from their parents, and it's like kidnapping. Okay, so some states were going far. Now, this is not something that is happening in large numbers. Okay, there was talks about, I don't even think it's actually come to fruition. Okay, where Georgia had actually prosecuted abortion providers for providing funds for children to be shipped to the state of Illinois for the procedure, for the abortion procedure. It's very, very rare, okay, where states, got the cojones to actually go after Illinois for that kind of stuff. But this law shields them, these abortion providers, from facing prosecution, which is wild because, there's due process. There's states should have the ability to go after whom they believe are criminals. And, if they want to charge them with kidnapping or human trafficking or something like that, then they should be able to. And then there's a due process system that would either convict or release these abortion providers if they're innocent. Okay, if they're innocent, they'll be released. If they're guilty, then they'll be convicted. Okay, so other states should have that right to prosecute people whom they believe or suspect are criminals. Okay, you take that away, this sets a very dangerous precedent. Okay, that states can essentially say, no, we're not going to let you do your job of law enforcement. We're not going to let you prosecute people who are in our state, which is outrageous. Okay, and sets a very dangerous precedent. So Pritzker claims that this is about protecting Illinois women from the onslaught of, you know, abortion protections coming out of, either Washington, Congress, if they, do some abortion protections, stricter abortion laws, or, neighboring states that have these stricter abortion laws like a 6-week ban. He says that this is about protecting women, right? So let's decode that, because really what he's saying is that other states are choosing life and other states are choosing to support mothers. Illinois is going to be doing the opposite of that. They're not choosing life, they're not choosing mothers, and they are becoming a place where abortion is the state religion. That is what Governor J.B. Pritzker has done with these bills and other bills. Okay, the removal of parental consent. All of this is making abortion, rather than a procedure, a state religion. Okay, so let's hammer this home. He calls Illinois a safe haven, but let's be honest, a safe haven for who? It's certainly not for the safety of the baby, okay, because baby dies. And it's not safe for women either, because a 12-year-old girl, unbeknownst to her parents, is traveling across state lines on taxpayer dollars with money that she was provided from, abortion providers in the state. She's got that money and she's traveling across state lines, and then she goes and takes these chemical abortion pills. And those pills come with real risks, hemorrhage, infertility, even death, as we saw in the state of Georgia. This woman died from taking those pills that she had received from North Carolina. She traveled across state lines. She wasn't required to have supervision, and she hemorrhaged out and died. But who did they blame? They blamed Georgia for having the 6-week ban, okay? So there's a lot that could happen with these chemical abortion pills when there's no medical supervision required. But Pritzker wants to roll out the welcome mat, right, for women, girls to come and get these abortions. So pack your bag, ladies. Pack your bags and forget the trip to Cancun. Forget the trip to the Bahamas. Illinois is your abortion destination. It's your abortion resort. And it's brought to you by Governor J.B. Pritzker, the travel agent for the culture of death. Okay, so I want to talk about 3709 now, the college campus one, where they, are requiring these abortion pills in the pharmacies and at the student health centers. Now, this was shocking to me. Not really, because I know that the left has a fascination with recruiting children for their causes. So this woman, her name is Emma Darborough. She's a student. She just graduated, okay, from U of I. And she admitted on tape in a press conference that she and some friends of hers, a couple of girls in a dorm room, wrote the bill on a Google Doc. Okay, now let that sink in. The killing of an unborn child and unborn children was written into law like it was a little frat party or like a sorority party. Okay, and they were all, around in their PJs and drinking probably little mimosas or whatever, White Claws, and they were sitting there drafting up this Google Doc, and this has real world consequences, okay? And we're talking about the killing, again, of unborn children, and we put that all in the hands of students, female students at U of I. So Emma called this bill that she drafted with her fellow students their last act of love for their peers, because they're graduating, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't see much love in this policy, 3709. It normalizes abortion like it's a cafeteria menu option, okay? And it's truly tragic, so I'm not seeing a lot of love in the policy. But this girl is probably going to grow up and she's probably going to wind up becoming just like Senator Selena Villanueva, who was also at this press conference. And she, said, "I'm a proud alum of U of I." And she told this crowd essentially that she learned activism and how to be an activist right there at U of I on the quad, and that abortion advocacy was a part of campus tradition. Okay, so you see how this is just a revolving door. Like, colleges are not in the business of actually educating our students and our youth, but they're in the business of creating activists and armies. So Emma Darborough is going to wind up becoming Selena Villanueva. Selena Villanueva, when she was there at U of I, was Emma Darborough. Okay. So it's just this revolving door of activists coming in and out of these colleges, and then they go into the state house, and then college, and then they go into the state house or public advocacy or the public sector or lobbyists or whatever. Or they draft bills. They become part of the system. Okay, so there's no tradition of free thought on these college campuses anymore. There's no debate. There's no seeking the truth. Today's college campuses, the truth has been replaced by slogans. Activism has replaced wisdom, and abortion is treated like a rite of passage. This is not progress, folks. This is paganism, satanic behavior wrapped up in a student loan bill. Okay, so imagine the course catalog at U of I. I'm telling you, they probably have this, Abortion Studies 101, the final exam, writing abortion policy in a Google Doc in between your Netflix binges and in between your White Claws, sipping your White Claws. Forget, reading, forget actually educating yourself. When you've got activism and when you can act as an army recruit for Governor J.B. Pritzker. I mean, that's what these little girls, these youth, these young girls in college were doing. They were acting at the behest of the Democrat Party. They're like little soldiers. They're little recruits. And it's truly disgusting. In fact, Selena Villanueva, she was quite literally talking about how she grew up and she didn't realize, had told her when she was at U of I that she would be where she's at today, she wouldn't have believed you. But she's happy to be continuing her activism with her friends. Let me try to pull up the direct quote here. Okay, here it is. "If I knew then what I know now, where my path would lead, I wouldn't have believed it, but I'm glad to see I'm still hanging out with my friends and working on causes we truly believe in." So you know how I say, these were losers in high school, typically people who go into the public sector either as lobbyists, state agencies, work for these state agencies, or they become lawmakers. Typically, these are people who don't want to leave college and don't want to enter the private sector, make a product, or provide a service that somebody wants and will provide money for that product or service. Okay. They don't want any business in the free market or the real world, as I would say. They want to continue in make-believe land. Okay. And they are typically losers or theater kids or nerdy type kids who all sit together at lunch and they plot their revenge. And their revenge is taxing you and I to death and funneling that money back into the pockets of them and all of their friends. Okay, so it just goes to show you Selena Villanueva's quote is proof what I've been saying all along, is that these people, they're all in the business of being with their friends. It's like college party, just continues, and they just kind of move to the state house. And it's really fascinating because they've created their own little world. And it's kind of sad because, they just never fit in, and they didn't attempt to try to fit in with anybody in high school or in school, like in elementary school. And they didn't attempt to conform, or they they just wanted to be weirdos all by themselves. And then they grew up and then they plotted their revenge. They're very bitter people. So as Christians, we have to respond to this, these bills, these abortion bills. So Psalm 139 reminds us, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." That's not poetic, okay, fluff. It's not, feel good words. And this is stuff in the Bible, okay, that proves that life begins at conception, because we believe the Bible is truth as Christians. So you cannot be a Christian and also a pro-choice or pro-abortionist, okay? You can't. Like, it's impossible, because you have to believe that the Bible is truth. And if the Bible is very, very clear here in Psalm 139, that life begins at conception and that it's sacred, period. You have to believe that. If you don't, you're not a Christian. You don't believe in the Bible. Therefore, that is not, you're not a Christian, okay? So Illinois Democrats, they want to redefine life. They want to redefine safety. And here's the kicker. They celebrate it. Okay, so they don't just allow abortion, they exalt it like it's the greatest accomplishment a woman could ever accomplish. Like they treat abortion like it's an accomplishment. Let me tell you what's empowering. Support, community, faith, family, hope. That is all empowering for women. Having your faith, having your family, not handing out abortion pills like Skittles in a pharmacy aisle, okay? That is not empowering. Representative Reagan Deering from Decatur, she actually said it best. She said, quote, "These bills work to promote and celebrate rather than work to build up the services and support that empower women through pregnancy and even postpartum." So one thing that I've come to learn as more of my friends are pregnant, and the more I'm starting to grow, I'm starting to realize that pregnancy, tough. Postpartum, tough. Becoming a mother, tough work. Okay, this is a sacrifice. Men sacrifice a lot. They provide protection. They provide for their families. Just recently, actually, it was a part of a balloon fest, which was really, really fun. I like to crew for balloons here in Lincoln. There was like somewhat of an emergency. It was a little scary. Everybody was okay, but the balloon landed on some power lines, and it was quite terrifying. And within minutes, the police showed up, the fire showed up, and linemen from Ameren showed up to cut the power from the power lines. And I kept thinking to myself, man, I'm so grateful none of these men are women, because women in emergency situations, typically not something like, I don't know about you, but if somebody's robbing you at gunpoint, do you want a woman to show up? I'm sorry, but the lineman who showed up, he was like this big burly guy, and he was like able to get up there like within seconds and shut down the power, and like it was just incredible. And women don't enter these fields, like, let's be real, okay? They don't build our roads, they don't fight our fires, they don't keep the electricity on. Okay, men enter these jobs disproportionately, okay? Like they are a big chunk of that type of workforce, okay? And I'm just so grateful that men are willing to take on those types of roles to protect society at large as well. So those are jobs of sacrifice, okay? Public service, that's actual public service, not what, Selena Villanueva and Governor J.B. Pritzker are doing. They're not public servants. These guys were actual public servants. And being in those types of jobs, that's sacrifice. Women's role in society is a sacrifice in that you have to populate the planet, okay? And there's a great sacrifice that comes to that. And what these leftists do, they prey on that because it isn't fun. Okay, have you ever talked to a pleasant pregnant woman? Probably not often. Okay, or a pleasant woman who's dealing with newborn, not having any sleep. Okay, being sleep deprived. It's not a pleasant experience. However, it is needed, and it is a sacrifice women provide society at large. And this was a dangerous job. Linemen going up, dealing with high power voltage and things like that. That's a sacrifice. And what the left tries to do is try to convince women that they don't have to do that they don't have to sacrifice. Well, if we try to convince women that they don't have to sacrifice anything at all, ever, then we're not gonna have a society anymore. Everybody has to give something of themselves. That is Christ-like. What did Jesus Christ do? He paid the ultimate price, his life, and sacrificed himself for us. And the least we can do is sacrifice a little bit of ourselves for the greater good of society. And the left doesn't want you to do that. Why? Because they're anti-biblical evil. It's just paganism that they worship and promote. Okay, they're just anti-Christian. They're not even freaking original. That's what really bothers me. Is like, you think the left, like everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm a leftist. I'm like so cool because I'm a leftist, and it's like I'm a hippie, y'all, and like love, peace. It's just like, you're not even original. You literally just take the opposite of the Bible and do it. So bingo, Deering, she says we need to empower women through pregnancy and postpartum by providing services and support. Yes, 100%. Because like I said, it is a sacrifice. Much like I say that we should support law enforcement, fire department, we should be supporting our linemen, and people who do these jobs that women don't typically do. We should be supporting them. We should be supporting women who sacrifice for the greater good of society as well. So the truth they're ignoring is that empowering women actually means giving them real choices, like childcare support, adoption pathways, healthcare, providing good healthcare, and not just guessing at female anatomy, which a lot of our healthcare system is. They just take guesses at female anatomy and female healthcare, and they don't take the time to actually care about female healthcare because they're too busy virtue signaling about it. Okay, so we shouldn't be worried about shoving abortion into every corner of our lives. Okay, we should be really empowering women to do the job that they're supposed to do for the greater good of society. Just like we should be supporting men and empowering men who do the jobs that women can't do, and they do for the greater good of society at large. So let's get back to Governor J.B. Pritzker's Marvel analogy. I opened with that because he compared the women who championed these bills. It was 3709 and 3638 or something like that. These two bills, the one was expanding protections under Illinois Shield law for abortion providers, which, like I said, sets a dangerous precedent because essentially we're saying to other states that you can't conduct due process or prosecute criminals or people who you suspect to be criminals. That sets a dangerous precedent. 3709 sets a dangerous precedent in that we allowed students to craft this legislation, which is just bizarro. We didn't elect those kids. Okay. Otherwise, we would have elected them. They're not able to run. They're not even able to vote in some cases, right? These women were allowed to vote because they were college students, but they didn't run for office and we didn't elect them. So why are they drafting legislation at a state level? Makes zero sense. I mean, and that's an attack on our democracy. Pritzker, he made this analogy that the women who championed these bills in the state house, that they were like the women in the Avengers movie. Okay, so, and I want to point this out. Do you ever notice that when Democrats hijack, like they have hijacked pop culture, like every movie has something liberal in it. Like you can't get to season 4 of a Netflix show without it being extremely woke. They've hijacked pop culture, and they usually hijack pop culture to make their politics sound cool. Okay, and that's what Governor J.B. Pritzker is doing here. He can't defend abortion on moral grounds. He can't defend it on scientific grounds because science tells us that life begins at conception and that there is a heartbeat, typically at 5 weeks. A lot of these heartbeat bills are, 6 weeks. It typically starts even 4 or 5 weeks old, okay, in the womb. So they don't have the moral grounds. They don't have the scientific grounds. So they turn it into a comic book cosplay and they pray and they like hijack these pop culture references to make their point. And he goes, "Hey, look at us. We're the superheroes of the world crafting abortion legislation." Well, guess who the villain is in this comic book? And he won't talk about that. Okay. If the women who champion these laws are um, the superheroes like they were in the Avengers Endgame movie at the ending scene, the ending scene, who's the villain then? Because that movie had a villain, Thanos. Who's the villain in this case? It's the unborn child. Okay, that's right. The unborn child, the smallest, little, most defenseless little life, and this is just pure evil masquerading as an entertainment. Like, he's trying to be entertaining when it comes to abortion, which is just something so sad. And when you talk to women who have abortions, this is not something that women like to talk about or that they feel good about. And he is downplaying it so much so that he's talking about it like it's an Avengers film and making pop culture references. The Avengers don't kill babies, by the way. I watched the film. They didn't kill babies. The women in that film didn't kill babies. Captain America actually stood for life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. Pritzker's Avengers, they stand for none of those things. Pritzker's little Avenger women. So I'm kind of waiting for Marvel Studios to announce like the incredible Planned Parenthood man. I wouldn't doubt it. Like a superhero that is like the superpower is erasing entire generations with one pill. Although that would probably be more like a supervillain in my eyes, but don't sleep on that. I guarantee, don't laugh, because I guarantee that Disney might actually buy the rights to that. The incredible Planned Parenthood man. His superpower is erasing entire generations with one single pill. Also at this press conference, and I promise we're going to shift gears here in just a second, but there's this woman, her name's Karina Villa. She's a senator, and she says that Illinois is the beacon of hope for the Midwest. So let me translate that. Illinois will gladly sacrifice its moral standing, its families, and its future, quite literally, our future generations. We're willing to sacrifice our future generations to lure abortion tourists and women who are vulnerable and in a vulnerable state. Because, like I said, pregnancy, postpartum, this is a sacrifice, mainly physically, emotionally, and they're preying on these women and they're trying to lure them in as abortion tourists. But here's the truth. Illinois doesn't need to be a beacon of abortion. Illinois needs to be a beacon of family, freedom. And instead, Illinois is building a legacy built on the ashes of unborn children. And folks, when you build a culture on death, it collapses every time. History is very clear on this. We need to build a culture of life. We need to speak life. So what do? You're probably wondering to yourself, man, Kat, you've given me a lot of information. What do we do from here? Well, we pray and we vote and we support pregnancy resource centers and we support women who are having pregnancies. And we are thanking them for their sacrifice, much like we thank men for their sacrifices to society at large, our police officers, our firemen, our linemen, people who entered those occupations who aren't women. Women don't dominate those fields, okay? We thank them for their sacrifice. We thank women for their physical sacrifice for the greater good of society, okay? So we have to raise strong families and we have to know the difference between life and death and good and evil. So we do that at a very, very small level, like in our own families. Like we have to build our families to know the differences between life and death and good and evil. We start there and then we start to pray, we vote, and then we support our pregnancy resource centers. Okay. So this battle isn't about Marvel. Okay. As much as Governor J.B. Pritzker wants to make it about Marvel Comics, it's about politics, or it's not even about politics. It's about the eternal question asked all the way back in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. Okay, so Governor J.B. Pritzker, he might want to be Nick Fury, but I'll tell you this, the real end game, it's not about the Avengers. It's not about politics. It's about accountability before Almighty God. And I know where I want Illinois to stand on that day when we are all called home, either in the rapture of the church or on Judgment Day, our own Judgment Day. I want Illinois to stand. I know where I want Illinois to stand. I want us to choose life because there's that question posed in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Now choose life. I know where I want Illinois to stand. All right. Now, I'm going to shift gears. We're going to talk about Illinois or about Chicago. Chicago, once the engine of American industry, the birthplace of jazz clubs, skyscrapers. It's a beautiful city. It really is. I was there recently. It's beautiful, but liberals, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but every time I go to Chicago, people are like smoking like chimneys, and like it's really weird because they smoke like chimneys, but yet they're like in running gear or they're like on bikes, like biking. It's really bizarre to me, but this used to be a city, that gave you used to be the city that gave you the Bears, deep dish pizza. It should be an amazing city. But in 2025, Chicago has kind of become something else that is unrecognizable. It's really become a cautionary tale of what decades of Democrat leadership can do to a great city. So we're going to get to that. Smash that like button. Is Donald Trump coming to Chicago to crack down on the crime? I'll answer that question here next. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends.
Check your blind spots. Men love to call things out. Weakness, hypocrisy, failure. We're wired to spot threats and take action. But Jesus didn't say, never judge. He said, judge not, that you be not judged. Why? Because judgment without humility is a trap. It turns you into a sniper with a log jammed in your eye. Matthew 7 hits hard. Jesus calls out a man who sees a speck in his brother's eye, but ignores the plank in his own. He's not saying, don't correct. He's saying, clean your lens first. Self-examination before confrontation. It takes guts to get real with your own sin, to admit you've gone soft, to face your pride, lust, laziness, or bitterness head on. But that's what real men do. They sharpen themselves before they sharpen others. Jesus didn't just want behavior police. He wanted heart warriors. Men who get the plank out, then humbly help a brother see clearly. Men who don't just flex spiritual authority, but walk with spiritual maturity. In verse 6, it's about discernment. Don't toss holy things to pigs. Don't waste truth on ears that mock it. Know when to speak. Know when to walk away. Before you blast through your next workout, check your form. Same with life. Patriot Pump fuels clean, focused energy, but you've still got to show up. Power with purpose. Clarity with strength. That's how you train. That's how you lead.
Hey, good morning. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Be sure to subscribe, by the way. I'd love new subscribers. I'd love some super chats for you guys to support the program. You guys can always go to Patriot Pump Energy, buy your bottle of pre-workout. It's right there behind me. You guys can see it there. It's got a cross on the logo is a cross, and it's got some barbells. And you can use promo code Conservative Cat at checkout. It's a premium pre-workout. We don't try to get you hooked on sugar like your other pre-workouts or caffeine. There's exorbitant amounts of caffeine in some of these pre-workouts, and you don't need all that much. Now, what we do what we do is our product is we pair the caffeine with something like a black pepper extract, and that is what is going to give you that long lasting energy all day. And you're not going to get the crazy crash, okay, from the sugar. It's like an energy drink alternative, and I highly recommend. I drink it all the time. It's great. Let me get to some of your comments. David, thanks for being here. David Yeeds. David Blumenschein's here. David squared this morning. So David Yeeds, he says, quote, I started in auto sales in 1984. One of the things that they talked about in training was how you were to make sure you include your wife in the purchase. She may not be picking the vehicle, but you had to keep her feeling that she was picking the vehicle. Okay. Because if she felt that she was left out, you could kill the deal with just one look. Right. So you had to, as a car salesman in 1984, keep the woman in mind. So somebody brought this up, like, actually, that's untrue, that, the vehicle colors, it's not determined by the feminazis. Back in the 90s, now you said 1984, so this is probably right when it started to shift over to like black and white. Black, white cars, very neutral looking cars. The feminist movement of the 1970s, this was the second wave of feminism. It was a period of significant activism focused on women's rights and equality. And this is really where the boom happened, where women were entering the workforce. So I'd imagine like in 1984, men were picking cars based on this, based on women's feelings. And black, white, these were colors of rebellion in the 1970s feminist movement, because women were typically known for decorating the household, making it very colorful. The flowers on the kitchen table or the flowers on the dining room table with dinner, and the decor is very maximalist and very homey, make the house a home. The minimalist thing really started to take off, 2010, I would say 2010 to 2020, the minimalist thing. And people say that's a millennial thing. It's not. It's a feminazi thing. And it really started to take shape in the second wave of feminism. And the same thing is true with our cars. Like the car salesmen started thinking about women more after the 1970s movement. When selling cars, they weren't selling cars to men anymore. They were selling cars to women, and these women wanted black, white, Suburbans, or they wanted these black, white minivans, right? And black and white, it was like a rebellion thing. Like, I'm not wearing pink, I won't wear pink. I won't wear the brightly colored sundresses for my husband anymore. I'm going to wear the black pantsuit because I am a corporate boss girl. Okay. So yeah, that's really fascinating coming from somebody in auto sales that was in that time period, 1984, that you guys actually received training that said, hey, base your sales off of what the woman wants. So I was exactly right that it is the feminazis who started to change the economy, or change the look of the car. And the color of the car, that it was truly, it was economy based. Yeah. Because all the consumers started to become women. You had to base the decisions off of everything women wanted, because they were demanding that you listen to them in the 1970s, and it really started to shift. So in 1984, that checks out that time period where you were in auto sales. That was right after the 70s movement. And when women started to do this rebellious thing with the colors. God forbid you have like a colorful dress on. You have to wear a black pantsuit, because otherwise you're not a corporate boss girly. So I appreciate you being here. David, I love that you're here this morning. Dave Paul Blumenschein. Rita, always great to see you. Roger, glad you're here on the program. I know that you're always listening. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's get to, before I took the break, I was telling you about President Donald Trump and him coming to Chicago. So back in the Oval Office, they said it couldn't be done for a second non-consecutive term. Donald Trump has already cleaned up Washington, D.C. Like, crime is way down. And there was like a week period, period there for a week where there were no homicides which Washington, D.C. hasn't experienced in years, where there were no homicides reported. So Trump has pretty much already cleaned up D.C. So now he says, Chicago, you're next. Yay! Very exciting because I want Chicago to be restored to what we all know it to be, or used to know it to be, which was the home of deep dish pizza, the Bears, once the engine of American industry. But now what it is just decades of failed Democrat leadership, and it's really just become gross. It's a bunch of liberals who run and bike and go to their Peloton classes, so sip their oat milk lattes and smoke cigarettes or whatever. We want it to be restored to what it used to be: deep dish pizza, Bears, and skyscrapers, and just the city. We want it to be a place where people want to go, and the people have been screaming. Like, there's those crazy women that I talked about earlier, the feminazi, who's like, oh, I broke my arm in a carjacking and I still don't want President Donald Trump to come here to clean up the city. Okay, lady. Okay. There are people in Chicago screaming, quite literally, for the president to come to Chicago. Trump, in very Trump-like fashion, he, his words are sharp. He says, quote, Chicago is a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. We're going to straighten that one out probably next. We'll straighten that one out, that city out next. So the way he's going to be able to do this, I think, is by invoking the Insurrection Act. Washington, D.C. was a little bit different of a story. He was able to federalize the police because Washington, D.C. is actually in federal jurisdiction. Look it up. People were screaming, fascist, how could he? He's a tyrannical dictator. No, it was completely within his jurisdiction because Washington, D.C. is under federal jurisdiction. So he federalized the police because he could in Washington, D.C. And guess what? An entire week went by, no homicides, which was pretty much unheard of for Washington, D.C. up until President Donald Trump made this decision to federalize the police. So there's people quite literally screaming, Donald Trump, please come to Chicago and clean it up. And that's not hyperbole when Donald Trump says that there's literally people screaming for him to go and clean up Chicago. He goes, quote, the people in Chicago are literally screaming for us to come. That's not exaggerating, because there's this woman, her name is Danielle Carter Walters, and she's actually a Chicago resident, and she stood up at a city council meeting recently, and she practically begged for the Trump administration to intervene. Her words, quote, please come here first, because you know what? We're going to help you. Imagine that. Citizens so desperate. They're like practically bribing. So I'd imagine, we're going to help you. We're going to help you in the midterms. I think that's probably what she's saying. Like, we're going to help your America First agenda. If you please come here to Chicago. Like, she's practically begging these the federal government to step in and save them from their own local leaders. And she's like bribing them essentially. Like, we're going to help you. Meaning, like, we're going to get out the vote for Republicans. We're going to get out the vote for 2026. I imagine that's what she was implying there. So, this kind of stuff does not happen in rural areas and in areas that are run by red leaders, okay, by Republican leaders. This only happens when you've got Democrat leaders and these cities are being run completely like incompetently. So Trump's critics, of course, they're firing back the Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson, the guy who makes Lori Lightfoot look completely competent, which is saying something. Beetlejuice, okay, she looks competent when comparing her to Brandon Johnson. He declared that Trump's plan is uncoordinated, quote, uncalled for, and unsound. He goes, now, let us pause. This is the guy who's presiding currently over a city where the carjackings are up, the burglaries are up, and he's worried about Trump inflaming tensions. That's what he said. He said, hey, I'm worried about Trump inflaming tensions here in the city of Chicago. Buddy, friends. Tensions are already inflamed. Okay. They're inflamed every single time a single mom walks out to her car in the morning and finds it stripped of its parts. They're inflamed when the store clerk has to watch someone casually walk out with $500 worth of merchandise because the law isn't going to punish them. Okay. Intentions are already inflamed there in Chicago. They're inflamed every time the Chicago Police Department, they're told to stand down, look the other way, and let chaos rule the streets in these teen takeovers. Donald Trump is not going to inflame tensions there, Brandon. Okay, he's acknowledging reality and he's trying to respond to that reality by cracking down on crime, by federalizing, and by getting the National Guard out there and getting it under control. So Johnson's words do not sound like leadership to me. They sound like excuses. It sounds like he is the captain of a sinking ship, and instead of patching the holes on the sinking ship, he's yelling at the lifeboats for making way too many waves. Like that's how I picture Brandon Johnson right now. He sounds ridiculous as a leader. He's not patching the holes on the sinking ship. He is yelling about people using the lifeboats and the lifeboats making waves. So let's go to our friend JB, Governor JB Pritzker. He stood up on Friday and he declared that the Trump administration is plotting against his political opponents, right? With the whole John Bolton thing and the raid. Governor JB Pritzker responded to that, and he was asked by a liberal reporter, I'm sure, no doubt. I don't know if he was paid or not, but a liberal reporter asked him at a press conference, like, hey, do you think you're next on, Donald Trump's list? Are you worried about arrest? Are you worried that you're going to be arrested? And he goes, yeah, I don't doubt that Kash Patel and, the Trump administration are plotting against me to try to arrest me. That was pretty much Governor JB Pritzker's response to that, which was kind of funny. And really, he's just trying to thrust himself into the national spotlight here. I'm sure that question was planned. So that does happen, where the Pritzker administration comes out and cherry picks reporters to ask certain questions, and that question would definitely elevate him to the national spotlight. Making him a target of President Donald Trump's political weaponization, and like he's a political opponent of President Donald Trump's, and he's trying to thrust himself onto the national stage, and he's saying that Kash Patel is plotting against me. And I'm next, like John Bolton. Like, come on now. In his world, law enforcement isn't about protecting the citizens, it's about politics. He said, quote, I'm not daring them to do anything. I'm just saying you don't have a right. Federal law and state law, separate endeavors, and they don't have a right to do the things that they're threatening to do. This is what Governor J.B. Pritzker said about Donald Trump coming to Chicago and cleaning it up and cracking down on the crime. Okay, he said the federal government doesn't have a right. There is something called the Insurrection Act that he can invoke, and there's a few other things that the president can do when they're not doing their job, right? And that's what's happening in Chicago, is they're not doing their job to protect the citizenry there. We just talked about this feminazi who said that she'd rather have her arm broken again by a carjacker than Donald Trump come there to federalize the city and clean up the crime. But there's women who are getting their arms broken via, carjackings and are victims of violent crime. And that's indicative that the Chicago law enforcement and the Chicago leadership is not doing their job, which is to protect against really evil. That happens. Romans 13 talks about that, where the government is in the business of stopping evil. And they're not doing that. So let's be honest here. Donald Trump sent federal agents into Chicago to actually enforce the law. The only people with something to fear would be the criminals. The only people who, would be upset by that are the criminals who are wreaking havoc on the city. But in the Democrats' worldview, cracking down on crime equals cracking down on Democrats, really. And maybe this was like a Freudian slip by Governor J.B. Pritzker. He says, quote, and I'm going to read this again, I'm not daring them to do anything. I'm just saying that they don't have a right. Federal and state law, separate endeavors. They don't have a right to do things that they're threatening to do. Really, I think it's a Freudian slip. I think Governor J.B. Pritzker here, maybe deep down, he realizes that his party has become the party of crime tolerance and has become the party of crime. And he really does believe that Donald Trump cracking down on crime in Chicago is him cracking down on Democrats deep down. Like, he won't admit that, but the Democrat Party has become a party of crime. So if Donald Trump cracks down on crime, then he's cracking down on the Democrat Party, and he's, plotting against his political opposition. And he views it that way because the Democrat Party, whether he wants to admit it outright or not, is the party of crime and criminals. And Donald Trump does not, and Governor J.B. Pritzker doesn't want the crackdown to be against his party, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's look at the numbers. Chicago officials are patting themselves on the back because they say the murder rate is down. And like I said, there's bodies on the slab in the morgue that they have there where the cause of death is pending. So I think it's like 240 plus homicides have happened since the beginning of this year. So January, that's a lot of people. Like near 300 people in Chicago have died at the hands of a murderer. Those are not chill numbers. Okay, those are jaw-dropping numbers. Okay, now it could be even higher. So from what I was reading, it was like 330 or so bodies in the morgue where the cause of death is pending. So it could be even double that number. They say crime or murder rate is down by 50%. I don't really believe that. They said that it's down by 50% over the last 4 years. Like I said, they manipulate and massage these statistics so that way they don't actually report murders as murderers, or they plead down murderers in some cases, like aggravated assault, something crazy like that. Or they'll plea it down to where they don't really recognize the death as a murder or count the death as a murder. Okay, so on the surface, it sounds all good. So let's just for, giggles, say that murder is down by 50% over the last 4 years. Okay. You look a little bit deeper during that same time period over the course of 4 years. Burglary is up, felony theft is up, misdemeanor theft, motor vehicle theft is all up, up by a staggering 40%. Okay, so picture this. You walk into your garage and your car's gone. You step into your house, the TV is missing. Your neighbor's Cadillac converter was sawed off, okay, and your friend's store just got looted for the second time this year. But hey, at least you didn't get murdered. That's literally what Chicago officials are trying to say with this 50% down over the last 4 years, which I don't even truly believe. I think that they're massaging those statistics and they're not accurately reporting the causes of death of these people. But they're really trying to pitch you oh, hey, at least you didn't get murdered. Theft is up everywhere. Misdemeanor theft, burglary, felony theft, vehicle theft, all that's up. But hey, you didn't get murdered. This is the kind of logic Chicago politicians want you to applaud. And, they've traded lives for livelihoods. Okay. And they think that that's progress. Okay. And I'm just kind of going with it here. I don't think that lives are being spared in Chicago. I think that murder is up, that they're just massaging these statistics, like I said. And either way, I would say livelihoods are under attack. Theft, burglaries, things like that are on the rise and have been for the last 4 years. So we've seen this story before in the 1990s. Rudy Giuliani, he actually walked into New York City and turned it around. Crime plummeted. Families felt safe again in the city of New York. New York became livable. And the difference was leadership. Okay. Giuliani wasn't afraid to enforce the law in New York. And he wasn't afraid to support the police. He wasn't afraid to demand accountability, even from teenagers. We should demand accountability from teenagers. These teen takeovers that are happening in Chicago, we need to demand accountability. We need to raise up these children in the way that they should go. And, spare the rod, spoil the child. We need to provide them guided discipline. Chicago could see the same turnaround, but not under the Democrat machine that has controlled it for nearly a century. Okay, we need new leadership in there, even if it is just temporarily. Chicago is the city of political corruption. Aldermen have been indicted. Governors have been sent to prison, scandal after scandal, pile. They keep piling on top of each other, these scandals, okay? It's almost as if corruption is like written into the city code or city charter, okay? Like this is like an ordinance. Like aldermen have to be corrupt. Your city officials have to be corrupt. So in every election cycle, they promise reform, but reform never comes, and the same party controls the levers of power, and they don't want reform. They actually just want control. So they never actually reform it because they just want control. So Trump says, he hasn't spoken to Mayor Brandon Johnson. He hasn't spoken to Governor J.B. Pritzker, and he's not going to. He's just going to go in and fix it. And you know what? Good. That's not just talking tough. He's done talking tough. He's going to go in and actually do it. He's going to be a man of action, not just words. And I hope that he actually does it, because millions of Americans believe, look, sometimes the only way you fix a problem is by, stop asking permission from the corrupt people. Really, why would Donald Trump ask permission from Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker to go in and crack down on the crime? Americans, we all believe that, hey, sometimes the only way to fix this stuff, fix corruption, is by, hey, let's stop asking permission of the corrupt people to do what we need to do, okay, and to get everything back on track. So as Christians, we have to remember what government actually stands for. Romans 13 tells us that rulers are supposed to be a terror, not to good works, but to evil. So the job of the government is to protect the innocent and to punish the guilty. In Chicago, that order has kind of been flipped around. They are punishing the innocent and they are protecting the guilty, especially with things like the Safety Act. The innocent live in fear and the guilty walk free. Proverbs 29 verse 2 says this: when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people mourn. And my friends, Chicago is mourning. Mothers are mourning their children. Families are mourning their safety. Store owners are mourning their livelihoods. All because wicked, incompetent rulers are in charge right now. So let me paint a picture for you. Just real quick. Stay with me. Brandon Johnson is a lifeguard. Okay, just picture him as a lifeguard, and he's standing at the edge of the pool, and he's got a whistle around his neck, and people are thrashing around in the water. And he's not worried about saving lives. No. He's worried about blowing the whistle, and blowing that whistle might inflame tensions. That's where we're at. And, picture Governor J.B. Pritzker as a firefighter. This building is on fire. The kids are screaming inside. And instead of grabbing a hose, he's lecturing about whether the fire truck has a permit to be in front of the fire hydrant. Okay, so this is the level of stupidity that we are dealing with. Well, the level of corruption, I would say, because I don't think Governor J.B. Pritzker is stupid. Brandon Johnson, I do think that he's not very competent. But we're dealing with this kind of leadership in Chicago, this level of leadership. This is what we're dealing with in Chicago. Governor J.B. Pritzker sitting there saying, does the fire have a permit to be building or to be burning here and burning this building down? He's right. The fire's right in front of the fire hydrant here. And instead of grabbing the freaking hose and taking out the fire, Governor J.B. Pritzker is bitching about whether the fire has a permit to be out in front of the fire hydrant. I mean, that's the kind of logic we're dealing with here. He's bitching about whether President Donald Trump has the authority to do this. And like I said, there's several ways he could go about this, one of them being the Insurrection Act, which I think is what's going to happen this week. Dems are the party of crime. Yes, I appreciate it. So here's the truth. Chicago doesn't need more excuses. We don't need any more finger pointing. It doesn't need another Democrat mayor crying about Trump's tone or a governor whining about, politics and trying to thrust himself onto the national stage. Chicago needs law and order. And, Donald Trump, he doesn't owe anything to Brandon Johnson or to Governor J.B. Pritzker. He just simply needs to act, and he doesn't need to ask permission from the people who are corrupt to stop corruption. Okay, Chicago needs law and order, they need safety, and they need leaders who love the people more than they love their party. So maybe, just maybe, Trump is right. And maybe it won't even be that tough to fix. It might just be a couple of weeks where he goes in and he cracks down on the crime. And just like Washington, D.C., he cracked down on the crime and they've gone without a homicide, like for, I think it was like a week or so, a period of a week where they didn't have a single homicide, which is huge for Washington, D.C. So it might not even be all that tough to fix. Friends, Chicago deserves better. America deserves better. And as always, we're going to keep scratching through the spin, clawing through the corruption, and purring for the truth here at Conservative Cat. Because when freedom is threatened, Conservative Cat is on the prowl. Be sure to subscribe right now. Hit the subscribe button. When we come back, we are going to be talking about J.D. Vance. He did an interview with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, and he was discussing the redistricting that happened in Texas. They did vote on the redistricting there in Texas that went through. And he says that, California might be entering this battle of redistricting, but there could be other red states that enter this battle of redistricting. And J.D. Vance, what he did, he just smashed this one out of the park, this interview. He crushed the Democrat hypocritical posturing as if they are the victims here in this battle. They are not the victims. He noted how Democrats in this interview, J.D. Vance, have been aggressively gerrymandering their states over the past 10, 20 years. And really what is going on in Texas, possibly Florida, they're just responding to this gerrymandering that the blue states have done. So I'm going to be right back with that. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We'll be right back.
Sometimes God stops you cold, not with a whisper, with a punch to the soul. Saul wasn't looking for Jesus. He was hunting Christians. He had power, position, and a mission. Then God knocked him to the dirt, a light from heaven, a voice that knew his name. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That moment wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a spiritual ambush. God still works like that. He steps into your mess, interrupts your pride, confronts the man you've become when you're wandered too far. Maybe you're building your own kingdom. Maybe your fists are up, fighting battles God never called you to. Or maybe you're just running hard in the wrong direction. But then comes the voice, clear, heavy, holy. Why are you persecuting me? Jesus doesn't want your behavior fixed. He wants your heart surrendered. Saul didn't get a lecture. He got a mission. Get up, go to the city. You'll be told what to do. That's the way of real manhood in the kingdom. Surrender first, then orders. You don't need every answer right now. You need to obey the voice. Follow the light. Rise up off the dirt and walk the road God lays out for you. Some roads break you to rebuild you, and that's exactly what Jesus wants. You want to train like a warrior? You need fuel like one. Patriot Pump is clean, powerful pre-workout that won't let you quit halfway. Just like the mission God gives you, it's not about the hype. It's about the grit. Fuel up, lock in, get after it.
Hey, go ahead and smash that like button and share this out with your friends. That really helps me out. You guys can also subscribe if you're new here. And if you're new here, there are ways to support the program. You can always send me super chats or super thanks via YouTube. You can also head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com, buy your bottle of premium pre-workout today. It's real cheap when you use the promo code. It's the best promo code out there, Conservative Cat. You get like $10 off. This is a premium pre-workout. So this is really good stuff. It's no artificial colors or dyes or anything like that. And what we do is we're not focused on getting you hooked on caffeine and sugar, okay, like a lot of other energy drinks. This is just a daily supplement. There's some creatine in there that helps your muscles, it helps blood flow. But we also pair the caffeine with something that's called a black pepper extract. This makes the caffeine last a little bit longer. And there's no need for exorbitant amounts of caffeine. So, for example, in some of these energy drinks, they'll do like 300 milligrams. That's insane. We do half that, 150 milligrams of caffeine, which is like a couple of cups of coffee, and totally a clean, authentic energy. And you're not going to crash because it's not paired with all kinds of sugars either. So, good stuff. It's fruit punch flavor. We want to do more. And the best way for Conservative Cat to do more, we want to do a blog. We want to, get the Conservative Cat website, theconservativecat.com. We want to get that up and rolling. We want to be able to provide you exclusive stories from across Central Illinois. We also want to be able to provide you opinion pieces and blog posts. So everything I talk about in the show every morning, I want you to have a place where you can go find it and share it with your friends via an article or blog post. And the way we do that is by your support. So any of the contributions you make, either through Patriot Pump Energy or through your super chats, that goes right back into the show. So let's talk about Vice President J.D. Vance, because he was on with Kristen Welker with Meet the Press, and he was talking about this redistricting thing. So we could probably suspect that Florida is going to wind up redistricting as well. Some of these other red states, they might try to redistrict and try to gain some red seats ahead of the 2026 midterms. Now, California is going to be responding, of course, to that, according to Governor Gavin Newsom, and perhaps Governor J.B. Pritzker even as well, where he writes out these 3 Republicans that we have. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't put past him. Now, J.D. Vance in this interview was talking about how Democrats for the last 10 to 20 years have gerrymandered their states so aggressively that, for example, in Illinois, we make up Republicans 43% of the electorate, yet we only have 3 seats. Take a listen to J.D. Vance here. He kind of provides an example with Massachusetts. Here we go.
We had way fewer House seats than we should have. 1, if the Democrats hadn't aggressively gerrymandered, and 2, if illegal aliens weren't counted in the census for purposes of apportioning congressional seats. The best estimates I've seen is that in California, for example, has 5 additional congressional seats than it should have, because they count illegal aliens for the purpose of apportioning representatives. Meanwhile, Ohio, my home state, lost a representative. We're literally losing representatives for American citizens in order to give congressional representation to illegal aliens. Republicans are trying to balance out the scales a little bit for basic fairness and for the integrity of our democracy, which the president cares about as much as anybody in the country. We had way fewer House seats than we should have. 1, if the Democrats hadn't aggressively.
Okay. So, I mean, this was a beautiful takedown. Once again, he smashed that one out of the park. Now, he used Massachusetts here. I've got another clip of that interview. As an example, use Massachusetts. You could have used really insert any blue state. So despite 32% voting Republican, 32% of the electorate voting Republican, that state there has 0 federal representation, 0 congressional seats. So J.D. Vance said they were all they were trying to do in Texas was really make this fair and to push against what Democrats have been doing for the last 20 years, which has been writing out Republican representation via their maps and gerrymandering. So Vance explained that Republicans had fewer seats because of the Democrat gerrymandering, and he made a point that, hey, illegal aliens, they might have been counted in the census. This is a border state, Texas. They might have been counted in the census. We know that probably Illinois is counting illegal immigrants in the census. And when it comes to representation, that's not fair because the illegal immigrants cannot vote in federal elections. So you're counting them in the census. Therefore, it factors into the redistricting, and that's not fair. So let's take a listen to J.D. Vance, this portion of the interview. Here we go. Let me cue this up. Here we go.
We had way fewer House seats than we should have. One, if the Democrats hadn't aggressively gerrymandered, and two, if illegal aliens weren't counted in the census for purposes of apportioning congressional seats. The best estimates I've seen is that in California, for example, has 5 additional congressional seats than it should have because they count illegal aliens for the purpose of apportioning representatives. Meanwhile, Ohio, my home state, lost a representative. We're literally losing representatives for American citizens in order to give congressional representation to illegal aliens. Republicans are trying to balance out the scales a little bit for basic fairness and for the integrity of our democracy, which the president cares about as much as anybody in the country. We had way fewer
Okay, so he talks about apportionment there. Apportionment. Vance said, according to estimates that he's seen, California had 5 extra seats that they wouldn't have had, but because they counted the illegal aliens in the census, they got those extra seats. So his point here is that balancing that out is more democratic. Okay, so what Texas was doing was that they were trying to balance that out. It was more democratic, more accurate to represent the American citizens. You have to try to cancel out the illegal immigrants because they shouldn't be counted when considering this redistricting and when doing this apportioning. So, yeah, J.D. Vance, another clip here. This was all skewed by illegal immigrants. So we have to try to make this more accurate and try to make it very democratic and represent the American citizens by making up for the counting of illegal immigrants in the census and by allowing them to influence the redistricting via the census. Welker claimed that undocumented people were not able to vote. In this clip, and this is important, take a listen. This is another portion of the interview on Meet the Press. Here we go.
Of course, people who are here and who are not documented are not eligible to vote. But
they're not eligible to vote, but they do go in the congressional apportionment. That's why California has so many more seats, is because they count illegal aliens. So even though they don't vote, well, some of them actually do vote, but hopefully most of them don't. They end up getting congressional representation that ought by right go to American citizens.
I know, of course, people who are here and who are not.
Okay, so there you go. She totally misses the point. She talks about how undocumented people, illegal aliens, how they're not able to vote. Yes, hypothetically, they're not able to vote, but we know it happens, right? They're automatically registered in automatic voter registrations when it comes to the DMV, and they get licenses in states like California and Illinois. She completely misses the point here. Okay. It's not fair that they got the extra seats because they're counting illegals in the census and they shouldn't be counting the illegals in the census. Does she not know, or is she just purposefully trying to cloud the question? Okay. Or cloud the, is she purposely trying to get us off of this? Like, hey, they're counting illegals in the census. Hey, they're taking representation away from Americans by doing that because California, therefore, is getting more representation than they normally would by counting those illegals. And they shouldn't be counting the illegals because they can't vote in federal elections. So Democrats are melting down over the redistricting thing because it is going to tip the scales for the midterms. And potentially if Florida does this as well, we're going to have the midterms in the bag. Not to mention they're polling very, very low. Democrats just in general are polling very low. I think they're at 19% favorability. Like the congressional Democrats are at 19% favorability. People don't like the Democrat Party anymore. It's not cool to be a Democrat anymore. So he has to explain that, yes, in that clip, he had to explain that, yes, they do count for apportionment. And that's not fair to American citizens because it results in these blue states that do count the illegal immigrants getting extra seats. Illinois is doing that because of the mass exodus. California is doing that because of the mass exodus that they're experiencing. They're counting the illegals, and that's why they're all pro illegals, because they are subsidizing really the mass exodus that's happening in their states with illegals. And they're getting them to go out and vote, and then they're getting them to change. They're getting them into the state and counting them as part of the population, so that way they can gain congressional seats. Illinois lost a congressional seat due to our mass exodus and our population loss. And they don't want that. They want to make sure that they keep as many congressional seats as possible. That's why they're counting them in the census. And Republicans in Texas were just trying to even the scales here. Because we're called to in the Bible, God wants even scales. And the Bible talks about that. So, you know, this is really bad for the Democrats. The redistricting, and they know that it could tip the scales in favor to the Republicans during the midterms. There's also additional factors here we have to talk about for the Democrats, including the massive shifts in party registration and the difference in how much money each party has. So if there's less people who are registering as Democrats in states where you have to register, if there's less people, that means less money for the Democrat Party, because you definitely want the numbers to show that you're registering a lot of people, because that means more donors and you can secure funding. So they fixed the census essentially with illegal immigrants, and they rigged it. Now, what Democrats or Republicans in Texas were trying to do was just simply even the scales here, so that way it could be more representative of the American people, and, you know, therefore helping Republicans. It does help Republicans, what Texas did. But, I mean, it is more representative of the American people. The American people like Republicans. So we can prepare for more meltdowns coming from the left, coming from Democrats, if, you know, the Republicans pull this off and they're able to redistrict and gain a few congressional seats through this redistricting. I hope Florida is next when it comes to the redistricting. All right, that's going to be it for today's show. I appreciate you being here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's a daily show, Central Time, Monday through Friday. You've been listening to Conservative Cat.